Is Sheikh Hasina a liability, madam? And second, are two countries the same thing in terms of our intervention, Kabul and Dhaka? To you, madam, first.
First of all, I think that it is most important to remember that India does not follow politics of convenience. We are not one of those countries which will change policies at the drop of a hat and say, oh, this is more convenient, so let's get rid of this person. And that is more convenient. No, we have a consistent foreign policy. We have certain principles in our foreign policy, and we follow them. And I think that in this context, saying, even talking about, arranging to send Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to another country or another place is absolutely unheard of. Do you do that with your good friends? Do you do that with somebody who respected your security red lines in Bangladesh for 15 years? And in return, you had between Bangladesh and India mutual economic cooperation, which gave them 6.5%, 7% economic growth, took them out of the least category status. So I think anybody who recommends this politics of convenience does not appreciate the finer points of foreign policy and does not appreciate how, not only how foreign policy is made, but how you have to be perceived by everyone. You have to be perceived as a consistent country, as a country who follows principles and not a policy of convenience, and a country who respects their friends and knows who their friends are. We have given many examples of people who have stayed in India in the write-up that you just showed, whether it is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, other leaders from Maldives, so many others, where we've done this. This is all in keeping with India's foreign policy principles that we have followed. So please let us very clearly accept that we cannot have a politics of convenience. If India were to follow a politics of convenience, it's going to be very, very difficult for India to convince anybody about our long-term aspirations in the world. Secondly, I would like to talk about Taliban. Now, the Taliban, let us notice one thing very clearly, that during Taliban 1, when Taliban 1 and Pakistan were almost interoperable, as it were, India had no relation with the Taliban government. None at all. Now, under Taliban 2, we have seen very clearly what is the objective of the government. They want to get the support of their own people, and so they want the humanitarian projects, they want the humanitarian aid to continue. And we have seen that they recognize the role of Pakistan as a spoiler in the region, as a promoter of violence, as a supporter of various, Al-Qaeda and other groups, that terrorist groups, their own groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba that are very ready to come across into Afghanistan. So for a variety of reasons, considering what they are doing and what their objectives are, India has opened a dialogue with the Taliban government. And we have said that we will talk to them. We've done it very steadily by stages and very carefully. The projects are continuing and the relationship is continuing. There is absolutely no comparison between what is happening between Taliban and India and what is happening in Dhaka. First of all, the regime in Dhaka is an illegal, unconstitutional regime. The regime in Taliban was established by an agreement that was done between them and the United States. So I think for a variety of reasons, there is absolutely no comparison between the two things. And to say that we should now pamper to an unelected, unconstitutional regime which is promoting others regime in Bangladesh and compare it to others is not correct.
Okay. Your opening comments, Suhas?
No, I completely agree with Madam Sikri, but at the same point, I'll say that whatever was said by Mr. Fabian, I don't think that's the correct approach, because in that case, nobody will trust India, and we have to bear in mind that we do not share a border with Afghanistan, but we do share the longest border with Bangladesh. So our relationship has to be completely different. And if we are keeping Dalai Lama, obviously we are not only keeping him on humanitarian grounds. China and many other countries see the Dalai Lama is being used as some kind of a leverage with China. So now if we can hold on to China, China's pressure on Dalai Lama, there is no reason for us not to be able to hold on to Sheikh Hasina. And in fact, I would say that if Sheikh Hasina is actually sent to any other country, it would mean actually prosecuting her in other countries. India cannot afford to do that because of the conviction in the court, through the kangaroo court in Dhaka. If she goes to any other country, she will be prosecuted through the International Criminal Court or individual cases which are filed in the European courts. Then she will be subject to lots of litigation, then she will be politically destroyed. But at the end of the day, we have to remember ourselves that the statecraft is about also giving shelter to your people. Otherwise, Tariq Jia won't be living in London for so many years. So Tariq Jia, irrespective of whoever says what, is an asset of MI6. Now, if MI6 can keep Tariq Jia for so many years, what prevents us keeping Sheikh Hasina in Delhi? I think we have to keep that in mind. Had Sheikh Hasina been sent to any other country, then she would have been a asset of that country, or she would have been picked up by
Okay.
any other country. Then can India afford to do that? Because at the end of the day, even now, possibly if there is free and fair election, if Awami League is allowed, you cannot possibly form the government in Dhaka without Awami League. So can government of India afford to do that? Maybe it's not convenient at this particular point of time, but I think, I mean, the whole idea that, for promotion of bilateral relation, that you accept anything and everything, I don't think that's the way foreign policy can be conducted, because ultimately we have relations with all other political parties in Nepal or elsewhere. Of course, there are certain parties which might be favored because you ideologically belong to same platform. It happens all over the world, not only in India.
Okay. The reason this will bring me to the another question. I'll start with Professor Swaran Singh and then go to General Kocher. Professor Singh, if I have to be the devil's advocate, a lot of write-ups have come in newspapers. You must have also read them. Their argument has been that we have to look at Bangladesh in slightly less emotional way. If I may quote unquote, dry national security perspective is the word which is being very commonly used. Your comments, sir.
That's obviously the ideal type of diplomacy that one assumes to be as objective and detached as possible. But when you have such deep cultural people-to-people linkages between these two countries, in fact, Osman Hadi's Greater Bangladesh map that was published by him in his newspaper Amar Desh recently included a large part of India into it. So once you have that kind of intense connections with both sides, I think it's not possible to completely detach emotions. But emotions should not be overpowering is what is required. They will be part of how two nations will engage with each other. For example, the whole issue of India providing a secure place to Sheikh Hasina is partly emotional. Because of the long, very close personal relationship that the leaders shared and the nations shared for a long period of time. But remember, that request came from Bangladesh. That request, if I have to be specific, came from Bangladesh army that was not able to provide security to her. And India had a very limited time to decide on that matter. So India decided, and if we have to only look at facts and not emotions, then India has clarified that India is giving her a secure place only as long as she is able to find a place for herself. And that this is driven by our concern for her physical safety. And once you have capital punishment announced against her in Bangladesh Kangaroo Court, obviously matters get complicated, but I will not completely disagree with the Mr. Fabian. I think since India had clarified that it's not a political asylum for India, in that sense, there is no harm in looking and facilitating if she can find a more safe place in terms of political asylum, which initially was being explored in London, I assume, until the United States reacted in a very negative fashion. So potentially maybe some of the Islamic countries, Gulf countries, I'm not saying it should happen in under duress or giving a projection that she is expendable, etc., but that is a long-term option. And when it comes to whether His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Sheikh Hasina are a liability or an asset, that I think primarily depends on India's leverages, India's diplomatic finesse, and how we want to utilize that asset, or does it become a liability for India? And that's a separate matter. And I think that should not be intermingled with what is happening right now between India and Bangladesh. The fact that Indian High Commissioner is invited to Foreign Office and told things which are unrelated to the violence at hand. India is being blamed for hosting Sheikh Hasina and that she's exporting terrorism to Bangladesh. And then coming to the point that, we are hearing rumors that the killers of Osman Hadi have run away to India, etc., India is always more than willing to collaborate and help. And Ambassador Sikri would vouch me that India is also capable of, helping in looking at where these could be people who are creating problem, or if the killers have run away somewhere, etc., And then when it comes to Taliban and Bangladesh, those are apples and oranges in that sense.